What if I told you that Arsenal's £390 million Emirates Stadium, once the pride of English football, has become their biggest problem? Arsenal just shocked the football world by admitting their modern masterpiece isn't modern enough. After nearly 20 years and hundreds of millions invested, they're planning to spend another £500 million to essentially rebuild the Emirates Stadium from scratch. This isn't just expensive, it's a confession that their grand plan has completely failed. The club that sacrificed a generation of trophies to build this stadium is now facing the brutal reality that it can't compete with newer venues. But here's the terrifying part. This expansion could bankrupt them, strand fans in transport chaos, or fail completely. And the clock is already ticking toward their 2028 deadline. This is the story of Arsenal's desperate race against time, and why their survival might depend on one of the most complex stadium projects in football history. When Arsenal opened the Emirates Stadium in July 2006, it was supposed to solve everything. The 60,704 capacity venue was the second largest stadium in the Premier League, designed to generate massive revenues and fund decades of success. But that dream quickly became a nightmare that's still haunting the club today. The move from beloved Highbury to the Emirates cost Arsenal £390 million and triggered what fans call the Banter Era, a devastating period that forced the sale of star players and created a 10-year trophy drought from 2005 to 2014. The financial constraints meant Arsenal had to sell players like Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, and later Cesc Fabregas to service the massive debt while watching rivals win trophies. The roof engineering problems emerged early, with the original polycarbonate design creating structural limitations that now make expansion extraordinarily complex. These same design flaws would later become the biggest obstacle to any future development. The good news is that Arsenal is now essentially debt-free after nearly 2 decades of financial discipline. However, this came at an enormous cost. The club's most successful period ended just as they moved to their superior stadium. The harsh reality became undeniable when rival clubs began surpassing Arsenal in every way, while the Gunners struggled with their expensive white elephant. Arsenal's once prestigious venue had fallen to 5th place in Premier League capacity rankings, and the gap was growing rapidly. The club that had sacrificed everything for their superior stadium was now being left behind by competitors with bigger, more modern venues. The tipping point came when Arsenal's success under Mikel Arteta created record ticket demand that exposed the stadium's limitations. The club introduced a controversial ballot system because they simply couldn't accommodate demand, while simultaneously charging some of the highest ticket prices in world football. This toxic combination of massive demand and premium pricing sparked fierce controversy among supporters who felt priced out of their own club. Co-chairman Josh Kroenke finally acknowledged the crisis in July 2024, admitting that internal conversations are starting to occur about stadium expansion. But this wasn't just about adding a few thousand seats. Arsenal needed a complete transformation to remain competitive. The Emirates Stadium, once their solution, had become their biggest limitation. The club's owners, Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, had experience with successful stadium projects through their Los Angeles Rams and the spectacular SoFi Stadium. But London's dense urban environment and complex regulations would make this project exponentially more challenging than anything they'd tackled before. The solution Arsenal is considering isn't just ambitious, it's engineering on the edge of impossibility. Architectural firms have presented Arsenal with proposals to expand the Emirates Stadium to a staggering 80,000 capacity, representing a 33% increase that would require adding nearly 20,000 seats. But this isn't simply about building bigger, it's about creating what experts describe as another small stadium on top of the existing structure. The expansion would focus primarily on building vertically upward, adding what's being called a third tier, similar to Barcelona's no-camp design. This approach is necessary because Arsenal is hemmed in by London's dense urban environment, with historic neighborhoods surrounding the stadium making horizontal expansion impossible. The technical challenges are mind-boggling, starting with the most complex problem, the roof. The Emirates Stadium's existing polycarbonate roof design that seemed innovative in in 2006 now represents the biggest obstacle to expansion. Complete roof demolition will be required to add the third tier, meaning Arsenal must essentially rebuild the entire upper structure while keeping the stadium operational. Beyond seating, the project includes massive retail and fan zone upgrades designed to create year-round revenue streams. Arsenal plans extensive shopping areas, restaurants, and entertainment facilities that would operate 365 days a year, transforming the stadium into a comprehensive commercial destination. However, the infrastructure and transport strain concerns are overwhelming. The expansion would add enormous pressure to local transport networks, roads, and utilities that are already stretched to breaking point. This creates a cascading series of upgrade requirements that could add tens of millions to project costs. The seating configuration must balance capacity with comfort and sightlines. The challenge is that seats furthest from the pitch are both the most expensive to install and command the lowest ticket prices, creating a complex financial equation that could limit returns on the massive investment. Accessibility improvements will be essential, with the expansion required to meet modern standards for wheelchair access, assisted hearing systems, and mobility-impaired facilities that the current stadium lacks. But the most intriguing aspect is the potential for innovative design solutions that could set new standards for stadium architecture. With Arsenal's owners having built the cutting-edge SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, expectations are enormous for creating something equally spectacular in North London. This is where Arsenal's expansion dreams collide with London's brutal reality, creating problems that could make the entire project impossible. The construction challenges are staggering enough on their own. Arsenal must essentially build a new stadium while keeping the existing Emirates operational throughout multiple seasons. This means coordinating construction crews around match schedules, training sessions, and countless events, while maintaining safety standards for 60,000 spectators every fortnight. But the real nightmare is London's transport infrastructure, which is already stretched beyond breaking point. Holloway Road Underground Station, just steps from the Emirates, is so inadequate it shuts an hour before kickoff and becomes exit-only after matches to avoid overcrowding. Built with only lifts and a narrow staircase, it bottlenecks even at current capacity. When the stadium opened, £50 million was spent on transport upgrades, but Holloway Road was left untouched due to complexity and cost. Now Arsenal face a catch-22. Expansion requires transport upgrades. The club must fund themselves, potentially adding tens of millions, with no guarantee of council or TfL approval. The 2028 completion target creates additional pressure that borders on impossibility. Arsenal has declined to host Euro 2028 matches, giving themselves a clear runway for construction, but the timeline remains incredibly tight for such a complex project. The temporary accommodation problem adds another nightmare scenario. Unlike Liverpool's Anfield expansion, which kept the stadium operational, Arsenal's vertical expansion might require extended closures. The cost of playing at Wembley Stadium could be astronomical, especially if Chelsea is also competing for temporary use while pursuing their own expansion plans. Weather delays, material shortages, and cost overruns are virtually guaranteed on a project of this scale and complexity. The original Emirates construction was delayed multiple times and ended up costing £100 million more than initially projected. But even if Arsenal can overcome these massive logistical challenges, they still face the ultimate question: can they actually afford to make this dream a reality? The financial numbers behind Arsenal's expansion plans reveal either brilliant business strategy or potentially catastrophic overconfidence. Early estimates suggest the Emirates expansion could cost upwards of £500 million, making it one of the most expensive stadium projects in football history. Unlike their original stadium construction, Arsenal will receive no public subsidies, meaning the Kroenke ownership must fund the entire project through private investment and debt financing. But here's the fascinating calculation driving this massive gamble. Arsenal's current matchday income of £137 million, already the highest in English football, could theoretically jump to around £175 million with 80,000 capacity. However, this projection assumes Arsenal can sell 20,000 additional seats at current price levels, which economics experts consider unrealistic. The revenue model becomes more complex when considering that the highest seats command the lowest prices while being the most expensive to construct. This means Arsenal faces diminishing returns on their investment, with each additional seat generating less profit than existing capacity. Stadium naming rights present a crucial opportunity. Arsenal's current deal with Emirates expires in 2028, and a state-of-the-art 80,000-seat venue in London could command naming rights worth £15 to £20 million annually. However, the financial risks are terrifying. Construction cost overruns are standard on major stadium projects, and delays could push costs well beyond £500 million. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated how quickly stadium revenues can disappear, making such massive debt incredibly vulnerable to external shocks. The debt burden could force Arsenal into another decade of financial restraint similar to their post-Emirates struggles. While the club finally escaped those constraints, taking on hundreds of millions in new debt could recreate the same problems that cost them competitive advantage for years. Interest rates and borrowing costs add another variable that could dramatically impact project viability. The timeline pressure creates additional financial risk. Missing the 2028 target could result in massive penalties, lost revenue opportunities, and construction cost inflation that makes the project uneconomical. If the expansion succeeds, Arsenal could establish themselves as one of Europe's revenue powerhouses, with a stadium that generates over £200 million annually when including all revenue streams. But failure could mean decades of crippling debt, strained relations with local authorities, and the embarrassment of an unfinished project, symbolizing poor planning. The next 18 months will determine whether Arsenal's bold vision becomes reality or joins the long list of ambitious stadium projects that never moved beyond the drawing board. What do you think? Will Arsenal build one of Europe's largest stadiums and reclaim their place among football's elite? Or will this gamble become one of the costliest failures in sports history? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating football stories worldwide.